Welcome back to The Open. I am so pleased to bring back in my friend and colleague, Bruce Croxon of Round 13 Capital to talk about this week's tech stories. But I got to say, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. You doing well?
First thing I got to do is welcome you back. I mean, it's been a while. Are you happy to be back? Everything going good?
I'm so happy to be back. It's nice, as I said to John, to talk to other people who aren't related to me. It's a little exhausting. I really haven't had a conversation in a really long time. So yesterday was my first day back.
I'm looking forward to it because I think the conversation we're having today is a topic that you and I used to get into all the time when we were doing the disruptors, right? Which is this issue of
absolutely.
Yeah, so let's talk.
Let me lay it out. Let me lay it out. So as we know, President Donald Trump kicked off of every major social media platform for his role in inciting the riots at the U.S. Capitol that we all watched last Wednesday. And it's brought up a lot of feelings about the role of big tech. For some, it's too little, too late. For others, it's about time. And for others still, they have no place in controlling freedom of speech. What was your initial reaction when you saw these tech companies make the move?
Well, my first reaction was I hearkened back to how often you and I talked about it, right? And it must be like 4 years ago where we kind of agreed, I think, that it was going to be the issue of our time. You have this whole ability of social network to masquerade other people's views as real news and its potential influence on how people ended up conducting themselves. And we watched it over the last 4 or 5 years just get more and more prevalent and have a greater and greater impact. And, I always maintain that, listen, at some point, these companies have to take accountability and realize that they are a media and there is some responsibility for what goes out over their network. And of course, that goes to Section 230, which they're talking about throwing away so that they can be liable. But the thing that stands out to me the most, Amber, is on the freedom of speech versus do they have the right to curtail issue, is of course they have the right. It's their obligation, these tech companies, is to their public shareholders in most cases, their private shareholders and their employees. They're a business. They can do whatever they want. And, basically what they've done is held their finger in the air, seen which way things are blowing, and have adjusted their policies accordingly. It's business, and that's what they're doing.
But isn't that the problem? I mean, for now, people can cheer it because they're falling on the side of their view. But what happens when tomorrow it doesn't fall on the side of their view? In the absence of regulation, it allows, to your point, these companies to put their finger in the air and decide what's in their self-interest. And as we've learned, that's dangerous to society.
And that's yes. And the real consequence, aside from society, to these businesses is that's what makes a market, right? You've got people that are supportive of some of the views that they allow, and you've got people that are not supportive, and their only obligation is to decide what side of that they come out on. Without regulation, this is going to continue, which is why I'm actually in favor, surprisingly, since I've been in the internet since its inception, from a business perspective, I'm in favor of more regulation and more laws that are clear that if you go offside it, that there's potential consequences.
Do you think that the scale of these companies allows for that? So what we're really talking about is, if I said something, if I lied, if I incited any kind of hate on the airwaves here, the entity BNN Bloomberg, Bell Media, they would be liable for that because they are a media company. If I can say the same things on Facebook, I might be liable as a person, but Facebook would not be. Same with Twitter. So what we're talking about is making Facebook, making Twitter just as liable as a media company. But when you have all this user-generated content, is it realistic that these companies will be able to police all kinds of speech, and who determines that?
I think it is. And last time I checked their market cap and their gross margin and how much money they were making, it's really just a function of how much they're willing to invest into screening. And with the advances that we've made in machine learning and artificial intelligence, where things that are offside, well-defined goalposts get highlighted in an efficient manner, I think there's absolutely room. Shareholders might not like it, and I'm surprised that with Section 230 discussion heating up, that there hasn't been more of an impact on public share prices. So shareholders might not like the increased operating expenses that it would take to be compliant. But absolutely, look at the value of these companies. It's really just about distributing some of the profits into more jobs to do the right thing. That's what it's about.
So what do you think this situation does for potential new entrants in the space? Does it make it easier because people are fed up? You see that with WhatsApp, Elon Musk tweeting, use Signal, other apps like Telegram and messaging sort of blowing up. Or when you regulate, does it make it harder for startups to come into the space and further entrench the dominance of the incumbents?
Yeah, glad you asked, because it's big issue number 2 in this whole discussion, which is, what does it do to the odds of antitrust ramping up as regulations ramp up? And unfortunately, I think it makes it harder. Right now, there's already talk about Mr. Trump going off and starting his own social network, and he'd probably be kickstarting it with 25 million users. It's easy to do. Faced with regulation about what he can say, what's appropriate, what's not, it gets a lot harder. And that's the unfortunate fallout, which to complete the circle, is also going to put the spotlight back on these big tech companies and make it harder for them to argue that they're not too dominant, which is going to ramp up the whole antitrust discussions again. So that's the way I see the circle playing out, and it's fascinating to watch it real time.
Good time to be a tech lawyer, I guess. Take that, programmers. Bruce, thank you so much. It was so great to talk to you and have your insights. As always, stay safe, my friend. That's Bruce Croxon of